Children laugh differently at 3 in the morning. I learned this on the night I heard them playing behind the cold storage doors of the hospital morgue. Giggling, running, counting down from 10, like they were playing hide and seek. The problem is, those doors had been sealed for 6 hours, and the children inside had been dead for days. I need you to understand something before I tell you this story. I love children. That is why I became a pediatric nurse. I have spent 17 years caring for sick kids, holding their hands during procedures, making them laugh when they are scared, staying with them through the longest nights of their young lives. Children are my calling, my purpose, my reason for getting up every morning and putting on my scrubs. But after what happened in the basement of Mercy Children's Hospital, I cannot hear a child laugh without feeling ice crawl down my spine. I cannot walk past a playground without scanning the shadows. I cannot close my eyes at night without seeing those cold storage doors and wondering what was really behind them. This story was originally shared on Reddit by a pediatric nurse who worked at a children's hospital in the Midwest. What you are about to hear is their experience, told exactly as they described it. This is not fiction. This is not a ghost story meant to entertain. This is the reason a dedicated nurse who loved her job more than anything walked away from pediatric care and never looked back. My name is not important. What matters is what I heard, what I saw, and what I discovered about the basement that runs beneath the place where sick children go to heal. Mercy Children's Hospital is a 200-bed facility that serves a 5-state region. We handle everything from routine tonsillectomies to pediatric cancer to transplant surgery. The building is relatively new, constructed in 2003, all bright colors and cheerful murals designed to make children feel less afraid. But beneath that cheerful exterior is a basement that nobody talks about. The basement contains the mechanical systems that keep the hospital running. Boilers, electrical panels, HVAC equipment, storage rooms filled with old furniture and outdated medical devices. And in the far corner, through a set of double doors marked "Authorized Personnel Only," is the morgue. Most people do not realize that children's hospitals have morgues. They do not want to think about it. They want to believe that children's hospitals are places where kids get better, where miracles happen, where death is rare and distant. The truth is different. Children die. Even in the best hospitals with the best doctors and the best nurses, children die. Cancer takes them. Accidents destroy them. Congenital defects claim them before they ever have a chance to really live. And when they die, their bodies go to the basement, to the cold storage room, to the place where they wait for transport to funeral homes and medical examiners. I had been working at Mercy Children's for 11 years before I ever set foot in that basement. I was a floor nurse on the oncology unit, the 4th floor, where children with cancer fought battles that no child should ever have to fight. My job was to give them the best care possible, to manage their pain, to support their families, to be there for them in whatever way they needed. I worked the night shift, 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. 12 hours of quiet hallways, sleeping patients, and the constant vigilance that pediatric oncology requires. Night shift on the cancer floor is brutal. The medications run around the clock. The vital signs need constant monitoring. And sometimes, in the darkest hours, children take turns for the worse. I had seen death before. I had held dying children in my arms while their parents sobbed. I had called codes that ended in silence. I had cleaned bodies and wrapped them in white sheets and watched them be taken away on gurneys. But I had never followed them to where they went. Until the night of February 7th, 2019. It started with a shortcut. The cafeteria closed at midnight, but the vending machines in the basement stayed stocked around the clock. Nurses learned quickly that if you wanted something to eat during a long night shift, you had 2 options. You could walk all the way around the building to the main elevator, take it down to the basement, walk to the vending area, and then walk all the way back. Or you could take the service elevator near the morgue, which cut the trip in half. Most nurses avoided the service elevator. They said it was creepy down there. They said the basement felt wrong. They said they had heard strange sounds echoing through the corridors. I dismissed their concerns as superstition. I was a practical person, a scientific person. I had no patience for ghost stories and haunted basement nonsense. So when I got hungry at 2:30 a.m. on February 7th, I took the shortcut. The service elevator was at the end of the hallway, past the supply closets and the medication room. I pressed the button and waited. The doors opened with a soft chime. I stepped inside. The elevator descended slowly. It was old, part of the original building infrastructure that had been retained when the new hospital was constructed on the same site. The walls were scuffed. The lighting was yellow and dim. It smelled like old metal and disinfectant. The doors opened onto the basement. The corridor stretched ahead of me, lit by flickering fluorescent tubes that buzzed like angry insects. The walls were bare concrete. The floor was cracked linoleum. Pipes ran along the ceiling, dripping condensation that pooled in the corners. It was cold, much colder than it should have been. The heating system hummed somewhere in the distance, but its warmth did not reach this part of the basement. I started walking. The vending machines were about 200 feet ahead, in a small alcove near the maintenance office. I had made this trip dozens of times. I knew the route by heart. I was halfway there when I heard it. Laughter. Children's laughter. High-pitched. Joyful. The unmistakable sound of kids at play. I stopped walking. My heart rate increased. My senses sharpened. The sound was coming from ahead of me, from the direction of the morgue. I told myself it was impossible. Children did not play in the basement at 2:30 in the morning. Children were in their beds, sleeping or resting or receiving treatment. No child would be down here, in this cold corridor, in the middle of the night. I started walking again. Faster now. The laughter continued. It grew louder as I approached the double doors marked, authorized personnel only. The doors that led to the morgue. I stopped in front of them. The laughter was coming from behind the doors. Distinct now. I could hear individual voices. 2, maybe 3 children. They were playing some kind of game. Running. Giggling. Their footsteps echoed on what I knew was cold concrete floor. I pressed my ear against the door. The sounds were unmistakable. Children at play. Hide and seek or tag, or some other game that children play when they have energy to burn. I heard counting. A small voice, probably a girl, counting down from 10. 10. 9. 8. 7. I felt my blood run cold. The morgue was a cold storage facility. It contained metal drawers where bodies were kept at near-freezing temperatures until they could be transported. There were no toys in there. No games. No reason for any living child to be playing inside. 6. 5. 4. 3. I grabbed the door handle. It was locked. Of course it was locked. The morgue was always locked. Only authorized personnel had access. 2. 1. Ready or not, here I come. The voice was directly on the other side of the door. Inches from my face. A little girl's voice, sweet and playful and absolutely impossible. I stumbled backward. My back hit the opposite wall. I stood there, breathing hard, staring at those double doors. The laughter continued for several more seconds. Then it faded. Slowly. Like children running further and further away, their voices growing distant until they disappeared entirely. Silence. Complete, absolute silence. I did not get my vending machine snack that night. I turned around and walked back to the elevator as fast as I could without running. I pressed the button and waited, my eyes fixed on the corridor behind me, my heart pounding in my chest. Nothing followed me. The elevator arrived. I stepped inside. The doors closed. I told myself it was nothing. A trick of acoustics. Sound traveling through the pipes in strange ways. Some kind of auditory illusion created by the humming equipment and the late hour. I almost convinced myself. Then I made the mistake of checking the census. When I returned to my floor, I pulled up the hospital patient tracking system. I wanted to know if any children had been admitted to the basement level for any reason. A procedure. A test. Anything that might explain what I heard. There were no children in the basement. There had been no children in the basement all day. But there were 3 children in the morgue. I stared at the screen. My hands were shaking. 3 pediatric patients had died in the past 48 hours. A 6-year-old girl with leukemia. A 4-year-old boy with a brain tumor. An 8-year-old girl who had lost her battle with a rare genetic disorder. Their bodies were in cold storage, waiting for transport. 3 children. Exactly the number of voices I had heard playing behind those doors. I did not sleep when I got home that morning. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, trying to rationalize what I had experienced. Sound travels strangely in old buildings. The pipes create echoes. The mind plays tricks when you are tired and stressed. But I knew what I heard. Children laughing. Children playing. Children counting down for hide and seek. In a room full of dead bodies. I went back 3 nights later. I do not know why. Some part of me needed to prove that it was nothing. That I had imagined it. That there was a logical explanation waiting to be discovered. I took the service elevator down at 3 a.m. I walked the same corridor. I stopped in front of the same double doors. Silence. The basement was quiet. No laughter. No footsteps. No counting. Just the hum of equipment and the drip of condensation from the pipes. I stood there for 10 minutes, listening. Nothing. I felt relief wash over me. It had been my imagination. Exhaustion and stress combining to create an auditory hallucination. I was not losing my mind. There were no ghost children playing in the morgue. I turned to walk away. That is when the singing started. A child's voice, high and sweet, singing a song I recognized immediately. Ring around the rosy. A pocket full of posies. Ashes, ashes, we all fall down. The voice was coming from behind the doors. From inside the morgue. I froze. The singing continued. The same verse over and over. Ring around the rosy. A pocket full of posies. Ashes, ashes, we all fall down. Then a second voice joined in. Then a third. 3 children singing together. Their voices harmonizing in a way that would have been beautiful if it had not been coming from a room full of corpses. I pressed my back against the wall. I could not move. I could not breathe. I could only listen as the dead children sang their nursery rhyme over and over and over. Ring around the rosy. The temperature dropped. I could see my breath forming clouds in front of my face. The fluorescent lights above me flickered. A pocket full of posies. The doors began to shake. Not violently. Gently. Like someone was pressing against them from the other side. Testing them. Seeing if they would open. Ashes, ashes. I heard footsteps approaching the doors. Small footsteps. Multiple sets. Coming closer. We all fall down. The singing stopped. The footsteps stopped. Everything stopped. I was standing in absolute silence, staring at doors that had been shaking moments ago, waiting for something to happen. Then a voice spoke. Not singing. Speaking. A little girl's voice, directly on the other side of the door. Will you play with us? I ran. I do not remember reaching the elevator. I do not remember pressing the button or waiting for the doors to open. I just remember running, my footsteps echoing through the corridor, my heart threatening to explode in my chest. When I reached my floor, I was hyperventilating. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold my badge to the scanner. A colleague found me in the medication room, sitting on the floor, crying. She asked me what happened. I told her I had seen a spider. I could not tell her the truth. How could I? How could I explain that I heard dead children singing in the morgue? That they asked me to play with them? That the doors shook like something was trying to get out? She would think I was crazy. Everyone would think I was crazy. So I kept it to myself. But I started paying attention. Over the following weeks, I talked to other nurses. Casually. Carefully. I asked if they had ever experienced anything strange in the basement. If they had heard sounds they could not explain. If they felt uncomfortable near the morgue. The responses were more revealing than I expected. A respiratory therapist told me she always took the long way to the vending machines. She said the basement felt wrong, like something was watching her. A radiology tech admitted he had heard children laughing down there once. He assumed it was sound traveling from one of the upper floors. He did not want to think about other explanations. A security guard told me he refused to do rounds in that section of the basement after midnight. He said his flashlight always flickered near the morgue doors. He said he had seen shadows moving in his peripheral vision. And then I talked to Margaret. Margaret was a night shift custodian who had worked at Mercy Children's for over 30 years. She cleaned every floor of the hospital, including the basement. When I asked her about the morgue, she set down her mop and looked at me for a long moment. Then she told me about the old hospital. Before the current building was constructed in 2003, there had been another Mercy Children's Hospital on this site. The original building, constructed in 1951. It served the community for over 50 years before being demolished to make way for the new facility. Margaret worked in the old building for 15 years. She knew its history, its secrets, and she knew about the fire. In 1978, a fire broke out in the pediatric ward of the old hospital. Electrical failure. The flames spread quickly through the outdated building. Firefighters arrived within minutes, but the damage was already done. 11 children died that night. 11 children who were too sick to escape, too weak to run, too small to save themselves. Their bodies were recovered from the burned ward. They were taken to the basement morgue to await identification. But something went wrong. The fire had damaged the building's infrastructure. The morgue's refrigeration system failed. The bodies were left at room temperature for nearly 3 days before anyone realized the problem. By the time they were discovered, the decomposition was severe. The identification process was delayed. The families were not allowed to see their children. And according to Margaret, the morgue was never quite right after that. Staff reported hearing sounds, children's voices, laughter, crying. They reported seeing small figures in the corridors, shadows that moved wrong, faces that appeared in windows and then vanished. The old hospital was eventually demolished, but the basement was retained. It was reinforced, renovated, and incorporated into the new building. The morgue was rebuilt in the same location as the original. The same location where 11 children had been left to decompose in the darkness. Margaret told me she had heard the children many times over the years. She had learned to ignore them. She had learned to do her work quickly and get out of the basement before midnight. She told me the children were louder on certain nights, anniversary dates, full moons, and whenever new bodies arrived. They like company, she said. They get lonely down there in the cold. I asked her if she thought they were dangerous. She was quiet for a long moment. Then she said something that haunted me. They just want to play, but they do not understand that they are dead. They do not understand why no one will play with them. And sometimes when they get frustrated, they do things. I asked her what kind of things. She shook her head and picked up her mop. Just do not go down there after midnight, she said. And if you hear them calling your name, do not answer. I wish I had listened. The third night happened 6 weeks later. April 3rd, 2019. A night I will never forget. I was working my usual shift on the oncology floor. We had a full unit, 14 children, all in various stages of cancer treatment. It was a busy night. Medications to administer, vital signs to check, parents to comfort. At 2:45 a.m., one of my patients died. Her name was Emma. She was 7 years old. She had been fighting acute lymphoblastic leukemia for 3 years. She was losing. I was with her when it happened. I held her hand as her breathing slowed. I watched her mother sob against her father's chest. I called the time of death at 2:52 a.m. The transport team came at 3:30 a.m. They took Emma's body to the basement, to the morgue, to the cold storage where she would wait until morning. I should have stayed on my floor. I should have finished my shift and gone home and processed my grief like a normal person. But something pulled me toward the basement. Call it intuition. Call it madness. Call it the connection I felt to a little girl I had cared for over 3 years. A child I had watched grow weaker and weaker until she finally let go. I needed to know she was okay. I know how that sounds. She was dead. She was not okay. She would never be okay again. But I needed to see her one more time. I needed to say goodbye in a place where no one would see me cry. I took the service elevator down. The basement was different that night. I felt it the moment the doors opened. The air was heavier, colder. The fluorescent lights were not just flickering. They were pulsing, a slow, rhythmic beat like a dying heart. I walked toward the morgue. The corridor was silent. No laughter, no singing, just my footsteps echoing on the cracked linoleum. I reached the double doors. They were open. I stared at them for a long moment. These doors were always locked. Always. The morgue required authorized access. You needed a badge and a code to get inside. But tonight, the doors stood open. Just a few inches. Just enough to see darkness beyond. I should have turned around. I should have reported the security breach and gone back to my floor. But Emma was in there. My patient. My child. My Emma. I pushed the doors open. The morgue was exactly as I had imagined it. Cold. Sterile. A row of metal drawers along one wall, each one containing a body. Examination tables in the center of the room, covered with white sheets. Fluorescent lights that buzzed overhead, casting harsh shadows on the concrete floor. It was empty. No living person was inside. But I was not alone. I felt them before I saw them. A presence. Multiple presences. Small. Curious. Watching me from the shadows. I turned slowly, scanning the room. And I saw them. Children. Standing against the far wall. 5 of them. Then 7. Then more. I could not count them all. They kept appearing, emerging from the shadows like they had been there all along, waiting for me to notice. They were translucent. Not quite solid. Their edges blurred and shifted like heat rising from summer pavement. But their faces were clear. Young. Innocent. Pale. Dead. They were all dead. I could see it in their eyes. In the stillness of their chests. In the way they stood without fidgeting, without breathing, without any of the constant motion that characterizes living children. And among them, Standing at the front of the group was Emma. She was wearing the hospital gown she had died in. Her bald head gleamed under the fluorescent lights. Her eyes, closed just hours ago in death, were open now. Looking at me, she smiled. Nurse Rachel. My name. My full name. Spoken in her voice, the voice I had heard so many times over 3 years, the voice that had thanked me for her medications and asked for extra pudding and told me she loved me. You came to play with us. I could not move. I could not speak. I could not do anything but stand there as the dead children watched me with their pale, patient eyes. We have been waiting for you. Emma stepped forward. The other children followed. They moved in unison, like a flock of birds or a school of fish, their movements synchronized in ways that living children never moved. We want to show you something. They surrounded me. I felt their presence like cold water rising around my body. Their hands reached for me. Small, translucent fingers brushing against my scrubs, my arms, my face. And then I saw. Images flooded my mind. Not my own memories. Theirs. I saw the fire. The old hospital burning. Children screaming in the smoke. Flames licking at hospital beds. Nurses trying desperately to save their patients. Failing. I saw the morgue. The old morgue. Bodies lying on tables. Small bodies. Children's bodies. The refrigeration failing. The lights going out. Days passing in darkness while their flesh began to change. I saw the loneliness. Years and years of loneliness. Children trapped in the basement where they had been left to rot. Waiting. Watching. Hoping someone would come to play with them. And I saw what they wanted. They wanted to leave. They wanted to go home. They wanted someone to find their families and tell them where their children really were. The 11 children who died in the 1978 fire were never properly returned to their families. The decomposition had been too severe. The identifications were rushed. Mistakes were made. Some of the bodies were mixed up. Some were sent to the wrong families. Some were buried in unmarked graves when no identification could be made. Their families never knew. Their families grieved for children who might not have been their children at all. And the real children, the souls of 11 kids who died in agony and confusion, were left behind. Trapped in the morgue where their bodies had been abandoned. Waiting for someone to make it right. The vision ended. I stumbled backward, gasping for air. The children were still around me, still watching, still waiting. Emma spoke again. Will you help us, Nurse Rachel? Will you tell our families where we really are? I looked into her dead eyes. I saw the hope there. The desperate, heartbreaking hope of a child who just wanted to go home. And I said yes. The next 6 months were the hardest of my life. I researched the 1978 fire. I found newspaper articles, incident reports, death certificates. I tracked down the families of the 11 children who died. It was not easy. Many of them had moved away. Some had died themselves. But I found them, one by one. I found them, and I told them the truth. I told them that mistakes had been made, that the bodies might have been misidentified, that their children might not be where they thought they were. Some of them listened. Some of them slammed doors in my face. Some of them threatened to call the police. But some of them understood. Some of them had always felt that something was wrong, that the body they buried did not feel like their child, that the funeral was not the closure they needed. I helped 5 families get DNA testing done. I helped them compare their samples against unidentified remains that had been buried in the county cemetery. 3 of them got their children back. 3 families were finally able to bury the right bodies. 3 souls were finally laid to rest in the places they belonged. The changes in the morgue were immediate. The sounds decreased. The laughter became less frequent. The temperature normalized. Staff reported feeling less uncomfortable in the basement. 3 of the children had found their way home, but 8 remained. I kept searching. I kept investigating, but the records were incomplete. The families were scattered. Some of them simply could not be found. Eventually, I had to stop. My health was suffering. My job was suffering. My sanity was hanging by a thread. I did what I could. I helped 3 children. 8 were still trapped, and Emma was one of them. Her body was right where it should be. Her family was there to claim her. She was buried in her family plot, surrounded by people who loved her. But her soul did not leave the morgue. I do not know why. Maybe death during treatment created a stronger bond to the place where so many children had suffered. Maybe she chose to stay with the others, to keep them company until they could all leave together. Maybe some other force was at work that I did not understand. But Emma stayed, and she is still there. I transferred to a different hospital 2 years ago. I could not work at Mercy Children's anymore. Every time I walked those halls, I thought about the basement. Every time I lost a patient, I wondered if they would end up down there with the others. It was destroying me. I work at a regular hospital now. Adults only. No pediatric patients. No children's morgue. But I still dream about them. I dream about 11 children standing in a circle, holding hands, waiting for someone to take them home. I dream about Emma at the center, her bald head gleaming, her dead eyes full of hope. And sometimes, in the dreams, she speaks to me. Do not forget us, Nurse Rachel. We are still waiting. We will always be waiting. I wake up crying every time. Some nights, when the grief becomes too heavy, I drive to Mercy Children's Hospital. I do not go inside. I just park in the lot and look at the building. And I wonder if they know I am there. I wonder if they can feel me, sitting in my car in the darkness, thinking about them. I wonder if Emma looks up from whatever game they are playing and smiles because she knows her Nurse Rachel has not forgotten her. I will never forget her. I will never forget any of them. The 11 children who died in the fire of 1978. The 8 who are still trapped in the morgue. The 3 I managed to save. And all the children who have joined them since. Because that is the truth I have never spoken aloud until now. The morgue does not only hold the children from the fire. It holds every child who dies at Mercy Children's Hospital. Every soul who passes through those cold storage drawers leaves something behind. A whisper, a shadow, a fragment of who they were. And they play together in the darkness. They sing together. They wait together for someone to hear them. If you ever find yourself in the basement of a children's hospital late at night, pay attention. Listen for laughter where there should be none. Watch for shadows that move wrong. Feel for cold spots that have no explanation. And if you hear children singing, if you hear small voices asking you to play, do not ignore them. They are real. They are there. They have been waiting for so long. And all they want is someone to remember them. Someone to help them find their way home. Someone to tell the world that just because their bodies died, their souls did not disappear. I could not save them all. I could not give them all the peace they deserved. But I can tell their story. And maybe, just maybe, someone will hear it. Someone who knows how to help. Someone who can finish what I started. Someone who can finally silence the laughter in the morgue. Until then, I will keep driving to that parking lot. I will keep sitting in the darkness. I will keep thinking about Emma and the others. And I will keep hoping that one day, the basement will finally be quiet. That one day, I will park in that lot and feel nothing but peace. That one day, the children will finally be home. What do you think happens to the souls of children who die in hospitals? Where do they go when their bodies grow cold? Do they move on to whatever comes next? Or do they linger in the places where they suffered? I know what I believe now. I believe they stay. At least for a while. At least until someone acknowledges them. Helps them. Remembers them. The children in the morgue at Mercy Children's Hospital are still there. I can feel them even now, miles away, years removed. They are waiting. They are playing. They are singing their sad songs in the darkness. Ring around the rosy. A pocket full of posies. Ashes, ashes, we all fall down. And they are asking in their small, hopeful voices the same question they asked me that night. Will you play with us? I wish I could say yes. I wish I could go back and play with them forever, until every single soul found its way home. But I cannot. I can only tell their story, and hope that someone somewhere is listening. Are you?